Long ago, in the quiet village of Acor, there lived a woman who stirred both fascination and fear. Her name was Annette. She wasn't the kind of woman who waited by windowsills for love songs or wedding rings. No, Annette was different. While others dreamed of white veils and shared surnames, she had her eyes set on something far more tangible: power. She had a beauty that didn't beg for approval. It commanded attention. Her walk, slow and deliberate, made people stop mid-sentence. Her gaze, steady, unapologetic, made men forget the women standing next to them. And perhaps that's why so many women in Acor hated her, or feared her, or both. In a village where a woman's value was still measured by how early she married, or how many sons she bore, Annette was an anomaly. She never cared for proposals or promises. To her, love was an illusion. Relationships, she once said with a smirk, were transactions dressed up in poetry. She knew what men wanted, and she gave it to them, on her terms, for a price. "It's not my fault your husbands prefer my hips to yours," she once snapped at a woman who called her a disgrace. Another time, when younger girls mocked her for still being single, she laughed in their faces. "You're married, yes, but your starving husbands can't even afford 3 meals a day. What exactly have you won?" Her words were venom, but also truth, an uncomfortable kind that settled into the bones. While others lived behind masks of virtue, Annette lived openly, defiantly. She wore her choices like silk, and she had no shame in showing them off. The men of Acor were drawn to her like moths to flame. They came with stories, money, and secrets, and they always returned. Annette had mastered the language of desire. She knew when to look away, when to laugh, when to listen. It was never just her body she offered. It was the feeling of being chosen by someone untouchable. Rumors swirled around her like perfume. They said even the king had once tried to visit her in disguise, unable to resist her legend. Whether true or not, it didn't matter. What mattered was the power these whispers gave her. But beneath the allure, there was calculation. Annette didn't chase men for love. She hunted opportunity. Every encounter was a chess move, every glance a negotiation. And then one evening, as the sun cast its last amber rays over Acor's dusty paths, Annette overheard something that made her pause mid-step. A wealthy chief, Chief Undu, was coming to town. He wasn't just any visitor. He was the largest palm nut exporter in the entire eastern region, known for his lavish lifestyle and dangerous ambition. His visit wasn't for leisure, it was business. And for Annette, business meant possibilities. She didn't smile, she didn't rush, she simply walked on, her mind already moving faster than her feet. This could be it. A man like Chief Undu could change her fortunes forever. Not just a night of pleasure, but a year of comfort, maybe more. But to win a man like that, she would need more than charm. She would need precision. That night, while the village slept under a sky full of careless stars, Annette stayed awake, planning. In the days that followed the news of Chief Undu's upcoming arrival, the entire village of Acor buzzed with anticipation. But no one was preparing with more focus or more ambition than Annette. She wasn't interested in small talk or the chief's titles. She wanted facts, real details, where he'd be staying, who he trusted, what made him weak. Annette knew better than to act impulsively. Charm might win a man's attention, but information won the game. So she reached out to her network. Quiet maids, overlooked clerks, tired bar girls, people who moved unseen through places where power let its guard down. To them, Annette wasn't just a woman. She was a queen without a crown, and they were her eyes and ears. Within 2 days, she knew more than the village elders. Chief Undu would arrive with a small entourage, preferring privacy over spectacle. He'd stay at the governor's guest house near the river, a place with just enough elegance to match his ego. His visit would last 3 nights, and he was known to indulge in palm wine and stories told by women with sharp tongues and softer hands. Annette had her opening, but she also had competition. Word had spread fast, and every woman who had ever dreamed of escape through seduction was polishing her jewelry and perfecting her smile. Annette didn't fear them. She pitied them. They thought beauty was enough. It wasn't. She spent her mornings alone, applying oils made from crushed herbs and flower roots, massaging her skin until it glowed like burnished copper. She didn't eat much, only fruits, water, and tea. She needed to stay light, focused. Her body was her armor, her scent, her spell. In the evenings, she walked, long strides along the dusty outskirts of Acor, past fields and fences, letting the wind carry away her doubts. She visited tailors late at night, demanding fabrics that shimmered without looking desperate. She rehearsed smiles in the mirror, not too wide, not too coy, just enough to promise mystery. She wasn't preparing to meet a man. She was preparing to conquer him. But beneath the rehearsals and rituals, something else stirred. A silence, a wait. Not regret, but something close to weariness. Nights were getting longer, lonelier, not because she lacked company, but because she was always playing a role, always performing. She sometimes wondered, who would she be if she ever stopped acting? But the thought never lingered long. She had no time for softness, not now. Then, 3 days before Chief Undu's arrival, Annette received word from her closest source, a kitchen maid who had served at the guest house before. The chief had a fondness for music, not the drums or flutes common to Acor, but old vinyls, songs from his youth. And more importantly, he disliked women who tried too hard. He preferred to do the chasing. Annette smiled. She wouldn't chase. She'd simply appear. She arranged to accidentally visit the market near the guest house the evening of his arrival, not in her flashiest dress, but in one that clung gently and whispered wealth. Her hair would be up, her earrings modest. She would buy fruit slowly, ask questions to no one in particular, and pretend not to notice him. The goal was not to seduce him on sight. The goal was to become a puzzle his mind would keep trying to solve. That night, she sat by the riverbank, barefoot, with her feet dipped in the cool water. The moon cast a pale light on her arms, and she whispered to herself, "Control the pace, let him wonder." The hunt had begun, but not the kind they wrote about in fairy tales. This was a hunt born of hunger, of strategy, of a woman who had nothing left to lose and everything still to gain. Chief Undu arrived just as expected, cloaked in expensive silence, guarded by 3 men in beige kaftans, and followed by rumours like shadows. The village elders welcomed him with practised politeness, presenting palm wine, hand-woven cloth, and 1,000 rehearsed smiles. Annette watched from a distance, standing beneath the shade of a mango tree. She didn't need to move. She only needed to be seen. As the entourage passed, she let her gaze linger, calm but not inviting. Her dress moved gently in the breeze. Chief Undu glanced her way. Just once, that was enough. That night, she didn't go to the market. She waited, and just as she predicted, it was Undu who sent someone for her. A message, not a demand. A subtle invitation. The chief would be dining alone on the second night of his stay. Would she care to stop by with company? She didn't respond right away. She let the message sit, like a gift on a table unopened. Only hours later did she send word that she might pass through briefly, if time allowed. This wasn't arrogance. This was theatre, and she was both actress and playwright. The next night she arrived late, intentionally, dressed in deep blue silk, her hair wrapped in gold thread. She carried no perfume, only the faint scent of rose oil from her neck. She brought nothing but herself. Chief Undu sat beneath a canopy of lanterns, alone at a low table, surrounded by plates of untouched food. He stood when he saw her, and for a moment something flickered in his eyes, not desire, but curiosity. "You're late," he said. Annette smiled softly. "Am I?" And she sat. The conversation began with casual topics, travel, trade, the weather in the east. But with each glass of wine, the words grew bolder. Undu wasn't a fool. He knew what game was being played, and he liked it. "You have a reputation," he said. "So do you," she replied. They'd spoken riddles, danced in metaphors, testing boundaries without crossing them. He leaned forward. She leaned back. He offered compliments. She returned questions. The evening stretched like a cat in the sun, slow, sensual, charged with unseen tension. And then, unexpectedly, he said, "I don't want to buy you." Annette paused. "Good," she answered, "because I'm not for sale." Silence, then laughter. It was the first real moment of honesty between them, and the most dangerous. For the first time, she felt something unfamiliar, unpredictability. She had expected admiration, desire, perhaps even obsession. But not this. Not someone who looked at her and saw the mind behind the body, the will behind the performance. She returned to her room that night, barefoot, her heels dangling from her fingers. Her heart beat faster than it had in years. Not from lust, but from uncertainty. She wasn't sure who had won that encounter, and that terrified her. The next day, Undu sent no message. She waited and waited. By evening, she walked to the river again, restless. Had she misplayed her hand? Had she pushed too far, or not far enough? That's when she saw him, alone, seated on a bench facing the water, drinking quietly. She approached. Waiting for someone, she asked. Perhaps, he said, not turning. She sat beside him. They didn't speak for a long time. Finally, he said, "You remind me of myself." Annette blinked. Is that meant to be a compliment? No, he said. It's meant to be a warning. She didn't respond. The breeze carried the scent of the river. Somewhere behind them, crickets began to hum. Undu turned to her. You know how this ends, don't you? Annette stared at him. Her voice came out quieter than she intended. Yes. Because she did know. She had lived this cycle too many times. Attraction, power, the high of conquest, the emptiness that followed. And now, for the first time, she wondered. Was she still hunting? Or was she the one being hunted? That night, she couldn't sleep. Not because of Undu's words, but because, in all her calculated choices, she had never considered what might happen if someone actually saw her, truly saw her, and still chose to walk away. And that, more than rejection, was what shook her. Because maybe her power had never been in seduction. Maybe it had always been in control. And now she was losing it. Days passed. Annette didn't chase Chief Undu, nor did he summon her again. The silence between them grew thick, dense with unspoken questions, and a strange tension that neither lust nor logic could cut through. But the village noticed. People always notice. Women gossiped as they fetched water. Men whispered over their drinks. Was Annette losing her touch? Had the great seductress finally met someone who wasn't impressed? Had age perhaps dulled her spell? Annette heard it all, and for the first time in her life, she didn't care, because something had shifted inside her, beneath her skin. She had spent so many years mastering the language of allure, eye contact, voice modulation, a perfectly timed laugh. But none of those tools seemed useful now, not when faced with a man who saw past the mask and didn't flinch. Annette tried to move on. She visited her usual haunts. She entertained the attention of men who still adored her. She smiled, she danced, but it felt like theatre now, flat and hollow. What Undu had awakened in her wasn't passion, it was presence. And presence, once felt, is hard to forget. She began to question the life she had built, the trades she made. The choices that once made her feel powerful now seemed like survival tactics stitched together by pain. Beneath her sensual confidence was a woman who had once needed to be seen. At any cost. Late one night, she walked alone to the chief's guest house. Not in silk, not in heels, but barefoot, in a simple wrap, her face bare of makeup, her voice bare of performance. She knocked. He opened the door himself. For a moment, neither spoke. I'm not here to seduce you, she said. I know, he replied. I just want to ask you something, she continued. Why didn't you come back? Undu studied her. Then he said softly, Because I didn't want to hurt you. Annette blinked, laughed once. That's ironic. I know, he said again. He invited her in. They didn't touch. They didn't flirt. They sat across from each other like two people meeting for the first time after a war. You're dangerous, he told her. So are you, she replied. But I've seen too many people mistake being wanted for being loved, he continued. And I didn't want to be another man who confuses the two. For your sake or mine. His words landed like thunder. Annette had always believed that power came from being desired. But what Undu offered her was something far more terrifying and far more sacred, the opportunity to be truly known. They talked until morning, about regrets, about masks, about the loneliness that follows a life lived behind performance. And when the sun rose, she left, without promises, without kisses, without plans, but also without shame. She went home, washed her face, and sat with herself. Not the performer, not the temptress, just Annette. and for the first time she didn't feel empty. She felt free. In the weeks that followed, she pulled away from the life she had built, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. She refused the advances that once made her feel powerful. She declined the gifts she used to accept without blinking. She began visiting the younger women in the village, not to lecture, but to listen. To tell the truth, she wished someone had told her when she was their age. She wasn't suddenly virtuous or reformed. She was simply awake. She started attending the market not to turn heads, but to buy ingredients and learn how to cook her favorite childhood meal. She sat by the river, not waiting for someone to approach, but just to breathe. The rumors changed again. People said she had lost her edge, that maybe love had finally broken her. But they were wrong. She hadn't been broken. She had been returned to herself. One morning, Mara, a young woman from the village, approached her. "Is it true," she asked, "that you turned down the chief?" Annette smiled, brushing corn from her skirt. "Yes." "Why?" "Because I finally realized something," Annette said. "I've spent my whole life teaching men how to want me. I never learned how to want myself." Mara said nothing, but she sat beside her quietly. Sometimes the biggest revolutions aren't loud. They begin when a woman stops performing for the world and starts living for herself. And in the village of Acor, the legend of Annette didn't end with seduction, riches, or conquest. It ended with a woman, alone by the river, smiling for no one but herself. And maybe that's where the real power begins.